So it's Sourdough September. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Rupert.
And we're from All About Greens.
So we've already shown you how to make a sourdough starter and get it going. And in this part of the video, we're now going to show you how to feed that starter and start looking after it to build up those delicious flavours we're looking for.
It's a bit like looking after a baby.
Alrighty, we've got two starters here. We've got one that has been completely neglected. Okay, so if you've forgotten to feed your sourdough starter, it might look a little bit like this. This will be an alcohol on the top of here. It's going to be quite denatured, there won't be much activity in, but you can rescue it. And then we've got our other starter here, which is actually a bit wet. So, you know, that's been fed, we put too much liquid in it, and it's a bit wet. So I'm just going to show you how to feed them and how to correct them here. So quite simply, we're just going to pour off that alcohol, and a little bit of that sourdough is going to come out of there as well. That starter is going to come out as well. So we'll get rid of that.
It smells really pungent.
Yeah, really sort of beery type smell to it. And so we're simply going to feed this starter here. Now you can do this with just a plain flour. You can use a strong white flour. But I'm actually going to use a little bit of rye flour. You could use granary flour, any type of brown flour. So for this one, I'm just going to do 50-50 white flour. So we've gone for approximately 80 grams of each of the flours there. We're going to mix that in. I'm just going to use a fork. Stir that through. It'll all go thick and claggy as we incorporate that starter, and then we're going to add a little bit of room temperature water.
Here's one I've made earlier.
Thank you very much. And we're going to turn that back into that wallpaper paste consistency.
Thick and gloopy.
Thick and gloopy, yeah, absolutely. And then that yeast, the yeast from any yeast in there, will reactivate and we'll end up with a really good, lovely, strong starter.
And what you're looking for is bubbles appearing on the surface, aren't you?
Yeah, it'll actually start to grow and look aerated, a bit like the inside of an aero. So there we go, we've got our nice, thick, wallpapery paste, and that can just sit on the side again now. We'll come and have a look at that tomorrow, and that should be looking really good and should spring back into life. So we've got our wet sourdough here, and it's not got much life in it. There's not a lot going on. We're going to tip off a goodly 50% of that. Same process. So again, I'm going to put about 50 grams of this rye flour in.
It doesn't need to be a strong flour if it's a rye or a buckwheat, does it, or a wholemeal?
No, not at all, just whatever is absolutely fine. And as you get into making sourdough, you might find that you can get some local flours, locally produced flours or something like that.
Yeah.
You go to a mill. So before I add any water to that, so if you were feeding this normally, you would just add equal quantities of flour and water. So discard 50% of your starter, and then equal quantities of flour and water, and you do that each day over the course of the 7-day process to develop your flavours. But in this case, because it was a bit wet, I'm just going to mix that in, incorporate that, take that off the scales. Actually.
And that can happen with different flour types. So, you know, you might do a 50-50 one time and it's fine, and then it might be a bit wetter the next, or a bit firmer with a different flour.
You're right, different flours have different rates of absorption, and some are drier than others. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water into that, and we're just going to again go for that wallpaper paste.
Now you're using a fork. I normally use a spoon, but looking at your technique, a fork looks better actually. Does that get the lumps out a bit easier?
A little bit, and again, you know, you don't need to worry if it's a bit lumpy. It's not an issue, because what this will do is, as it sits, it'll rehydrate, it'll sort of even itself out, and you'll find that, you know, you end up with a smooth mixture anyway. You know, and that's something I've learned by doing sourdough, is that, you know, those that have time to they're left for a good period of time, the gluten network actually builds itself, whereas we're all used to kneading doughs to develop the gluten when you're making with fresh yeast or dried yeast or something like that. But in this case, that gluten network is actually developed over time.
Minimal kneading required.
Minimal kneading required, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to leave this one a little bit thicker. So this one's had 7 days of its treatment. Every day we've discarded 50%, and we've added that equal quantity of flour and water, and we'll come back tomorrow and actually bake with this.
And you've still kept the seal off your Kilner jar.
That's it, we want the air to get to it. And if you're not going to have a chance to feed it, don't worry, give it a feed. If you go on holiday or something, give it a little feed, pop it in the fridge, that will slow the process down, and then when you come back you'll be able to tip off any excess liquid like that, and then quite simply feed it again, wait 24 hours for that yeast to activate, and once that yeast activates all nice and bubbly, then you can start to make your dough.
Perfect.